Worry is born the moment our eyes stay fixed on what is visible instead of who is leading us forward. Most of the time, anxiety does not come because the problem is new, but because our focus has shifted. We begin to measure our future by what we can see, what we can touch, and what we can calculate. And when the numbers don't add up, fear takes over. The mind starts replaying worst case scenarios, and the heart grows heavy with questions that have no immediate answers. But worry is not a sign that something is wrong with you. It is often a signal that you are trying to carry alone what was never meant to be carried without God. The danger of worry is that it magnifies the problem and minimizes God. When the situation looks bigger than your strength, your thoughts begin to tell you that defeat is inevitable. Yet the truth is, what you see is only a fragment of reality. You see the obstacle, but you don't see the strategy. You see the delay, but you don't see the preparation happening behind the scenes. God is not limited to the present moment. He is already standing in your tomorrow, arranging outcomes, opening doors, and closing paths that would have harmed you. When you focus only on what is in front of you, you forget that someone greater has already gone ahead of you. Many people worry because they think they must figure everything out before moving forward. They believe peace will come once every detail is explained. But faith does not work that way. Faith begins when explanation ends. Trusting God means walking even when the path is not fully visible, believing that the same God who guided you before will not abandon you now. Every past victory, every door that opened unexpectedly, every moment you survived when you thought you wouldn't is proof that God has been faithful. If He did it before, He can do it again. Worry also convinces us that we are alone in the battle. It whispers that no one understands the weight we carry, that no help is coming, and that we must somehow rescue ourselves. But the reality is, God has never asked you to be your own savior. He asks you to trust Him, to lean on Him, and to acknowledge Him even when the road feels uncertain. The moment you shift your focus from the size of the problem to the greatness of God, something changes inside you. The situation may not immediately move, but your heart does. Peace begins to replace panic, and confidence slowly returns. When you remember who goes before you, worry loses its power. You may still face challenges, but they no longer define your outcome. Your steps become steadier, your prayers become bolder, and your hope becomes stronger. Focusing on God does not deny reality. It places reality in the hands of the one who controls it. Many times, the battle feels overwhelming not because it is truly greater, but because we are measuring it against our own strength. When you look at the challenge in front of you through human limits, it will always appear impossible. The pressure, the opposition, the uncertainty all seem too heavy to carry. But the moment you bring God into the picture, the scale changes. What intimidates you does not intimidate Him. What drains you does not exhaust Him. God is not reacting to your situation. He is reigning over it. The enemy of your peace often comes disguised as size. The problem looks bigger than your resources, bigger than your experience, bigger than your faith. That's why fear speaks so loudly. But fear is loud because it wants control, not because it has authority. The truth is, there has never been a battle in your life that caught God by surprise. He saw it before it formed. He understood it before it appeared. And he already prepared a way through it before you even knew it existed. The power of God is not challenged by the magnitude of your struggle. Sometimes we forget that God specializes in situations that look impossible. He does his best work when there are no human explanations left, when logic runs out, when strength is gone, when options are exhausted. That is often the moment God steps in and reveals his power. The size of the battle is not meant to scare you. It is meant to show you how great God truly is. When the problem looks bigger than you, it is an invitation to stop relying on yourself and start trusting fully in him. What makes a battle feel unbearable is when you believe the outcome depends entirely on you. That belief creates pressure, anxiety, and fear of failure. But when you realize that God is fighting for you, the weight shifts. You are no longer responsible for the victory. You are responsible for your trust. God does not need your strength to win the battle. He needs your faith, your obedience, and your willingness to stand even when you feel weak. His power is perfected in moments where human strength runs out. The opposition you face may look fierce, but it is temporary. God's power is eternal. The challenge may seem unmovable, but God specializes in moving what cannot be moved. When you place your confidence in God instead of your circumstances, you stop being intimidated by what you see. Your heart becomes steady, not because the storm has ended, but because you know who controls the storm. God's presence in your battle changes everything. What once felt like certain defeat becomes an opportunity for victory, and what once made you afraid becomes a testimony of God's faithfulness. One of the greatest sources of exhaustion in life comes from believing that every battle depends on our effort. We wake up already tired because we are carrying responsibilities that were never meant to rest on our shoulders alone. We try to manage outcomes, control people, fix situations, and defend ourselves at every turn. Over time, this constant struggle drains our strength and clouds our peace. But there is a powerful truth that changes everything. Not every battle is yours to fight. Some battles require your trust, not your effort. When you try to fight everything in your own strength, you limit what God can do. Self-reliance often feels responsible, but it can quietly push God to the side. You start depending on your planning, your experience, and your logic instead of God's guidance. And while human effort has its place, it was never designed to replace divine intervention. There are moments when the wisest move is not to push harder, but to surrender deeper. Letting God fight for you does not mean giving up. It means giving control to the one who sees what you cannot. Many people struggle with the idea of stepping back because they fear losing control. They believe that if they don't act, everything will fall apart. But God does not ask you to be passive. He asks you to be faithful. There is a difference between laziness and trust. Trust means you still show up, you still pray, you still obey, but you stop trying to force outcomes that are beyond your power. When God fights your battles, he handles things you cannot touch, hearts you cannot change, doors you cannot open, and resistance you cannot overcome. Fighting every battle also creates unnecessary stress because it keeps your focus on the enemy instead of on God. You start reacting instead of responding. Your emotions take control and peace becomes fragile. But when you hand the battle over to God, your posture changes. You stand firm instead of frantic. You pray instead of panic. You wait with confidence instead of worry. God's way of fighting is not always loud or immediate, but it is always effective. There is freedom in knowing that victory does not depend on how strong you are, but on how faithful God is. When you stop striving and start trusting, your strength is renewed. Your mind becomes clearer, your heart becomes calmer, and your faith becomes stronger. God does not lose battles, and when He fights for you, the outcome is secure. Your role is not to win the war, it is to trust the one who already has. There are seasons in life when it feels like nothing is moving forward. No matter how much effort you put in, you pray, you wait, you try again, yet the situation remains the same. In those moments, it is easy to believe that you are being held back or that something has gone wrong. Delay often feels like denial, and loss often feels final. But what you see as a setback may actually be a setup carefully designed for a greater purpose than you can currently understand. Pressure has a way of revealing what is inside you. When everything is comfortable, growth is slow and faith is shallow. But when you are pressed on every side, something deeper is being formed. Strength you didn't know you had begins to rise. Patience is developed. Character is refined. God often uses seasons of waiting to prepare you for what you prayed for. If He gave it to you too soon, you might not be ready to sustain it. The delay is not meant to harm you. It is meant to shape you. Loss is another place where God's purpose is often hidden. Losing something important can leave you feeling empty, confused, and vulnerable. You may question why it had to end or why it had to be taken away. But sometimes what leaves your life makes room for something better to enter. God removes what no longer serves, His purpose, so that what truly matters can take its place. What feels like subtraction may actually be divine protection or redirection. God sees the full picture, even when you can only see the pain. Waiting seasons are uncomfortable because they require trust without visible progress. They test your faith and challenge your patience. But God is never idle during these moments. While it may look like nothing is happening on the surface, something powerful is happening beneath it. God is aligning people, arranging opportunities, and positioning circumstances in ways you cannot yet see. He is working behind the scenes, ensuring that when the breakthrough comes, it will be complete and lasting. Every delay carries a lesson, and every loss carries a message. They teach you where your strength truly comes from and who you can rely on when everything else is uncertain. These seasons strip away false confidence and replace it with genuine trust in God. When the victory finally arrives, you will realize that the waiting was not wasted and the loss was not meaningless. It was all part of the preparation, turning your pain into purpose and your struggle into a story of victory. Fear, anxiety, and confusion often take hold when the mind is left alone to wrestle with uncertainty. Thoughts begin to pile up, each one heavier than the last. until peace feels distant and unreachable. In these moments, the heart becomes restless and clarity is replaced with constant questioning. This is where prayer becomes essential, not as a ritual, but as a lifeline. Prayer is the space where the weight you carry is transferred from your shoulders to God's hands. When you pray, you are not just speaking words, you are shifting authority. Fear thrives in silence and isolation, but it loses power when it is brought into the presence of God. Anxiety may feel overwhelming, but it cannot survive where faith is being exercised. Prayer interrupts the cycle of negative thinking and reminds your heart that you are not alone in the struggle. It creates a pause between what you feel and what you believe, allowing truth to speak louder than emotion. Confusion often comes when you are trying to see the future without God's perspective. You want clear answers, quick direction, and immediate solutions. But prayer does something deeper than providing instant clarity. It aligns your heart with God's will. Sometimes the situation does not change right away, but you do. Your thoughts settle. Your emotions stabilize. Your focus shifts from panic to purpose. Prayer brings order to the chaos inside, even when the world outside remains uncertain. One of the most powerful aspects of prayer is that it invites God's peace into places fear once ruled. Peace does not mean the absence of problems. It means the presence of confidence in God's control. When you pray, you make room for that peace to enter. You begin to trust that God is working even when you cannot see evidence yet. Anxiety loses its grip because you are no longer relying on your own understanding. You are leaning into a wisdom greater than your own. Prayer also strengthens your ability to hear God's voice. When fear is loud, it drowns out direction. When anxiety is high, decisions become rushed and reactive. But consistent prayer quiets the noise. It sharpens your discernment and gives you the courage to move forward with confidence. Over time, prayer does not just remove fear, it builds faith. It trains your heart to respond with trust instead of panic. In prayer, you find not only comfort, but also the strength and clarity needed to walk forward without being ruled by fear. Many people live with uncertainty because they treat victory as something that might happen if everything goes right. They hope for the best, but quietly prepare for disappointment. This mindset keeps faith fragile and confidence unstable. But when victory is understood as a promise from God rather than a possibility, everything changes. You no longer wake up wondering if things will work out. You wake up believing that the outcome is already in God's hands. That belief does not ignore reality, but it reshapes how you face it. God's promises are not based on your performance. They are not activated by how perfect your faith is, how strong your emotions feel on a given day. Victory rests on God's faithfulness, not on human consistency. There will be days when you feel strong and days when you feel weak, but God remains the same. He does not withdraw his promises because you are tired, confused, or afraid. His word stands firm even when your confidence wavers. Seeing victory as a promise gives you courage to stand in the middle of uncertainty. You may still face opposition, delays, and resistance, but they no longer define your destination. When you trust God's promise, setbacks lose their power to discourage you. they become temporary obstacles rather than final outcomes, you stop interpreting every challenge as a sign of failure and start recognizing them as part of the process God is using to bring you forward. This perspective also changes how you respond to pressure. Instead of panicking, you persevere. Instead of giving up, you keep moving. You understand that God's timing may not match your expectations, but His timing is always right. Waiting becomes an act of faith rather than frustration. Obedience becomes easier because you trust the result even when you don't yet see it. Confidence grows not because circumstances improve, but because your trust in God deepens. When you believe victory is a promise, fear loses its influence. Fear depends on uncertainty, but faith thrives on assurance. You may not know how the victory will come, but you know who is bringing it. That knowledge steadies your heart and strengthens your resolve. You walk forward with peace, not because the road is easy, but because the outcome is secure. God has never lost a battle, and when He gives a promise, He fulfills it